This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Ahren.
And I'm Chris.
This is episode 34, Shadows Over Innistrad, Modern Review. He's so mad right now.
It's okay. It's better than actually just having a little side machine for bumper noises.
Yeah, but I would totally have.
I know.
All right, so that's a discussion for another day. Today we're going to talk about Shadows Over Innistrad, obviously. We had some picks. We're going to do the normal set review thing that we do. Just go down, run it down by color, and just sort of go over what we think is actually either good or almost there, or like good enough in a very, very, very specific deck, as is often the case.
Yeah, especially on Innistrad, which just has some of the more liked tribes for sure.
Yeah. And they always nail it. Like Innistrad, for some reason, they just always nail it. BNR update is next week. I think everybody's pretty clear on what is going to happen, but we'll touch on it anyways. We'll talk about the decks that we're working on. I've got a bunch in the pipe. I know you've got a bunch in the pipe. So there is that. And then we're going to talk about sort of where everything is in terms of all of the various and sundry content that we are producing. So
that was much more elegant than what I typed.
Quickly. Yes. Yeah, my show notes say content State of the Union-esque thingy. So
it captures the subject.
It sure does. All right, Shadows Over Innistrad. The shadows are here. They've rolled into Innistrad, which, you know, if you're a D&D player like me, is just basically Ravenloft. And that's totally okay. I'm 100% fine with that.
God, it's been like way too long since I played something in Ravenloft.
They came out with a board game that's actually supposed to be pretty good if you don't want to actually have to trudge through playing an extended amount of D&D, if that's not your jag.
Do you know what it was called, or is it just
I believe it's called Return to Castle Ravenloft.
I think I might have actually heard of that, yeah.
I'm sure they have it at the shop. Ravenloft board game. Nope, it's just called Castle Ravenloft.
Okay, well that's the inevitable sequel.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure there's many of them. So this set has a bunch of splashy mythics that we talked about last time, and a bunch of hidden gems, and a bunch of chaff. I will say, though, I feel like this set has a lot more. The wheat to chaff ratio is much higher on the wheat side than in previous sets. After, like, post cons, I feel like this is one of the meatier sets.
I felt like this set did a really good job in the middle ground. Like, there's a lot of cards, because it's also different because we're looking at it from a modern perspective. There's a lot of cards that just hit it perfectly, but might not make it into modern, and I think that's also, like, really important to get out, because we're obviously going to, like, poo-poo a couple of these cards, but not because they're bad. Like, so many of these cards I really like. I just don't know. And a lot of them I'm excited to play in Standard. Like, I have no idea what I'm going to build when I have to build something for that, but there's definitely a lot of hidden gem stuff for Modern as well.
There was just a lot of... I was surprised at the power level and the lower rarities.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I mean, that is something that I think people who draft the set are going to notice. Mm-hmm. Like, the premium uncommons, if you will, some of them are really...
Yeah.
Really, really premium. And a lot of the stuff that's at common is very serviceable and much better than stuff that previously had been printed at common. Like, if you take some of these sort of out of the context of this set and put them in, you know, whatever, Theros or something like that, they would just be so off the charts.
Yeah. Actually, one of my favorite cards in this set is actually a common, and I am almost certain I'm not going to play it in Modern, but I am definitely excited to play it in general. And it's actually a functional reprint of a very old card from Odyssey. Actually, it was also printed in Exodus as an uncommon. Cartographer, 3 mana 2/2. When it comes into play, you return a land from your graveyard to your hand.
Oh, is that Groundskeeper?
In this set, in Shadows Over Innistrad, it is Stoic Builder.
Stoic Builder,
I believe. The art is a guy with some like 2x4s or 4x4s over his shoulder.
Oh yeah, he was one of the early, the like lumberjacky werewolf guy.
Stoic Builder. He was in one of those. But yeah, so I'm super excited for this guy. At common rarity for like Pauper. I already have a list. It's sweet. Gonna use him with cycling lands for value.
Super value.
Because you can just go turn forward that guy, get back a cycling land, cycle, along with a bunch of green-black stuff. Like
he's not a werewolf, but his art looks like one of the other werewolves.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why he ended up in that story, I think.
Yeah.
Especially at the time in the story-wise, he was still like healthy and human, while the whole before everything went bad.
Well, all the other green humans turned into werewolves.
But anyway,
Cartographer.
Yep, it's basically the same thing. This one is strictly better because it's a 2/3 for 3.
But why wouldn't
whereas Cartographer was a 2/2.
Well, why wouldn't you play Tilling Treefolk? It is also a common, and you get 2 land cards back to your hand.
Tilling Treefolk.
Yep.
Is it the same? Oh, it's a smaller body.
Well, it's a 1/3 instead of a 2/3.
Being able to attack for 2 is actually kind of important when you're trying to play like a mid-range value deck. I'd definitely look at it though. Like I also put it alongside the new common Goyf.
Yep.
So it's like Drown in Sorrow, Tribal Instance,
Got it.
Nameless Inversion.
Yeah. Artifact creatures.
No artifact creatures. Because the Tribal Instant, it's a 3 mana destroy target non-elf creature.
Okay.
Is a tribal instant, so that is 2 types, but you're also running cycling lands and creatures and yourself milling. So like you're always going to have 4 things.
Yeah.
But it works better with Gurmag Angler because you can like play Gurmag Angler on turn 3 or turn 4 while also making sure you still have 4 types, even if you only have 3 cards afterwards.
So white is where we are starting. Avacyn is a card. Many people have talked about it. It's fine. People will play it. It is very expensive. And I don't know that there's anything we can add to the discussion of her.
I don't know. I don't see any deck that in Modern that needs it, really.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, hey, Sarah Angel with Flash. Yeah, I mean, that's something. And then, the flip and all that stuff. But it just seems like a lot of bookkeeping for not a huge payoff.
Well, more so like I don't know of any white decks that want to play a 5 mana creature that also
Anger the
want
gods
to
when you
protect. Well, that also want to protect a board full of creatures.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the decks that this is competing for slots for are the decks running, like, Dragonlord Odotai. This isn't going to go into something like Death and Taxes or... Like, there currently isn't... I can't think of a mono-white control deck, because even the Sun Titan control deck doesn't want this.
Yep.
Like, you already have enough recursion with Sun Titan, that's the point, and Emiria.
Yep.
Like, I don't know of any deck that needs Archangel Avacyn as a finisher. Like, Dragonlord Odotai is normally just a better finisher in that spot, and even then, like, Restoration Angel beats are often just sometimes better.
Yep. So, Audric Lunarch Marshall is the first one that was on your list. He didn't make my list. I just kind of...
so this was another one that I just put on because this isn't one that's probably going to just miss a little bit. So 4 mana, 3/3. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn. If a creature you control has first strike, the same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. Cards with these types of effects have the potential to be very powerful. There is no shell that this card goes in, but it is a very potentially powerful effect that someone might be able to break. So it's not so much like I think I'm going to play this card, but someone might find something cool to do with it, and I think that's going to be a theme throughout a lot of the cards that we talk about in this set.
So this goes in the Cairn Wanderer. What was that card? It's a delve card that when the creatures that you delve away, it gets the abilities of the cards that you delve with it. So like there was a deck for like a hot minute.
Well, it was a deck in Standard that involved putting Chromanticore in your graveyard and then delving that with it was something Flare, right?
Yeah. Man.
Maybe Soul Flare?
Soul Flare, that sounds right. We'll look it up. Or you can look it up.
I'm working on it.
So it goes in that deck. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know that this guy's like a slam dunk. I guess in a deck that has like some kind of anthem. So in a Death and Taxes, not even that. In a white weenie deck where you're running like Honor of the Pure and stuff like that, if you had this guy at a top end and a creature with Skulk, then that actually is probably pretty good.
It's not bad. In that type of shell, like, it's important to remember you also have Thalia, which happens to have first strike.
Yep.
If you had this, even with like Blade Splicer makes the golem and gives the golem first strike, which gives all your creatures first strike. So those are two very quick examples. But
we should talk about Skulk too. So Skulk is a non-evergreen keyword that's just for this set. Or I mean, it might be for the next set, but currently only exists in this set. And it basically is a keyworded version of an old mechanic that says this creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. It used to have a longer reminder text to it, but now it has a keyword. It's called Skulk. And in the theoretical white weenie deck with Odric Lunarch Marshal at the top end, if you have something else with Skulk, all of your 1/1s or 2/2s can't be blocked by, your opponent's Tarmogoyfs or whatever, and you just swing board, probably kill them in one hit.
Right.
So that is that. Like I said, he's fine.
Like I said, it's a potentially very powerful effect that you don't see too much of.
Right.
There is a card that gains all abilities of creature cards in your graveyard.
That's Cairn Wanderer.
Cairn Wanderer. So,
but that's 5 mana.
Right.
And I think it's like a 5 mana 3/3.
Yeah. So, like I said, someone might find something for this. Who knows?
Well, there was not Necroplasm, Necrotic Ooze. That's all this stuff goes in to that deck because Necrotic Ooze gets Necrotic Ooze has all the abilities.
That's the card I was actually thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a 3 toughness creature for 4 mana. Like, it's not great in that sense, but I mean, if you have something in the graveyard that has Indestructible, well, it's better.
Yep.
So,
and we will come back to that. So, Aldrich is fine, as we said. Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yes.
I love this guy. He just... he's so good. He's 1 white, human soldier. Actually, might be a lady. Hard to tell in the picture. A tri-corner hat. They actually did a really good job of not making the ladies in this set look like chainmail bikini ladies.
I mean, I feel like they've been doing a fairly good job of that overall recently in the past couple sets.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Anafenza,
Yeah.
and
Yes. The ladies are wearing actual armor instead of like chainmail bikinis.
and plus like they kept with part of it is they also keep with themes. Like no one in like Innistrad as a place would ever wear anything like that. So
yeah. Well, I mean, big
kept
picture
with it.
It's drafty.
Yeah.
And there's ghosts in the draft. Woo. All right, so Thalia's Lieutenant is 1 white for human soldier. When Thalia's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other human you control. So a better type of anthem.
Right.
And whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. So the card is amazing. Champion of the Parish into this guy, into Doran the Wary, gather the townsfolk.
You don't even need to do that.
I
like
know,
even just
Thalia,
death and taxes.
Yeah, just the
possibilities are really there. And I'd like to also throw in the fact that this card, even though this card has counters, it works a lot better with Eerie Interlude than you'd first imagine. Because if you have Thalia's Lieutenant, Champion of the Parish, and like 2 other creatures in a human tribal disruptive deck, all of those creatures are going to have counters once you blink them,
right?
Which presumably they may already have because you played, let's say you play Thalia's Lieutenant last. But Thalia's Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish are each going to have 3 counters on them,
right? Which
is also just very good. So like in response to a board wipe, something like that is just very, very good.
Yeah, so this guy, he is an immediate home in every Death and Taxes list, Norn Sisters, anything like that. Even any heavy human like white value deck that's just trying to like Restoration Angel, Blink, or if you want to take the blue white Blink deck and just sort of kit it out with humans instead of whatever miscellaneous stuff is in there.
Oh yeah, Reflector Mage is a human.
Oh yeah, so he is. God, that card's so good. Oh, yeah. For those of you that are not playing Reflector Mage, man, that card is good. Like it's busted in Standard, which means it is still really good in Modern.
Yeah,
it's really good. It just play Reflector Mage.
Find a home for it.
Find a home, because man, he's good. All right, Bygone Bishop.
So this one made my list. This is not a card I will try playing, but it's once again a card I can definitely see people wanting to play. So 2/3 for 3, Spirit Cleric with flying, and whenever you cast a creature spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, investigate.
Yep, that's a card.
So this is one of the cards people were looking at for the Shape Anew.
Oh, right. Yep.
It's a card that checks a lot of boxes. Now with Collected Company, every creature that has a converted mana cost of 3 or less needs to be evaluated a little bit like that. And because it triggers off of other creatures with 3 or less, does this fit in one of those style decks? I don't know. Do one of those style decks want clue tokens? I don't know. But this objectively isn't a bad card.
Right.
I just don't see a home for it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Like, this is one of the cards, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of pushing the limit. Let's see where we can actually get with it. I don't currently have any ideas, but someone might.
Yep. I had in that area, I had Handwear Militia Captain. So this is she's 1 white for a human soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Handwear Militia Captain. So she goes from being a 2/2. Her flip side is Westvale Cult Leader, Human Cleric, #Cleric Tribal. I know it's not going to be a thing, but it should be a thing. Westvale cult leaders' power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. Keldon Warlord. Bringing it back. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. I really like tokens that are 2 colors. I just do.
Sure.
This goes in the black-white Edge of the Divinity Deathbringer Liege deck that I've been meaning to make for the past 4 years. I just like it. You know, like as a 2/2 for 2 that comes down, and it's very easy to flip her, and in a tokens deck or something like that.
Right.
I mean, she's a very serviceable, pseudo Bitter Blossom.
Sure.
So I like her a lot. You had Expose Evil. Eerie Interlude, I guess, is the next one on the...
Oh, yeah. Eerie Interlude, I've talked about before. It's real good. It's just strictly better Ghostway, and it's also strictly better than Ghostway because it's not going to be attached to like a $15 price tag, which is fantastic. You can actually already go out and get copies because it's in the dual deck, but I imagine it won't be expensive. So 2 and a white for an instant. Exile any number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So exile as many of your own creatures as you want, and then they get to come back to play. The fact that it comes back to the next end step means because it's not just in a single moment, it's blinking and coming right back, it gets around wrath effects.
Right.
So worst case scenario, you're protecting your board presence.
Yep.
You can also abuse that with things like I already mentioned, Thalia's Lieutenant, Champion of the Parish, Reflector Mage, all of these types of cards. And it even works very well with the card you just mentioned, the Militia Captain. If you're playing her on like turn 5 or 6 when you already have 3 other creatures, so you hit your 4,
right,
but they're about to wrath your board, you can just blink them out and have them all come back in at your end step and then immediately untap and flip her. Yep. The other benefit of it being end step means as long as you're doing it on an opponent's turn, all of your creatures aren't going to have summoning sickness. Like, you're going to get to untap with them and attack with them. So I like this card a lot. I think it's good as a fair card. I think it's also very easy to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So go to town. As for the other one... this one was also just getting a shout out as the best card in Shadows for the Shape New control deck. So 1 and a white for an instant. Tap up to 2 target creatures, investigate. So it gets you your artifact token. It's not embarrassing in a blue-white control deck.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it. It's something that, if what you're doing is trying to cast Shape Anew as a combo, this card helps you do it. I'm not saying it's the best card in all of Modern. I'm saying people were looking for an investigate card that worked well in the deck, and Expose Evil is the best option.
Okay.
I mean, because it's really not bad. Like, it taps down an infect creature.
Yep.
And I mean, doesn't sound great, but I mean, it taps down affinity creatures.
Yeah.
Which even just tapping down like Signal Pest and whatever creature that isn't Etched Champion that has cranial plating on it is going to allow you to live way long enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I had a couple more in white. I had Open the Armory, which is half Enlightened Tutor, half Steel Shaper's Gift. And so it's 1 and a white for a sorcery. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. A very solid utility. You know, it's cheaper than Heliod's Pilgrim. It's more expensive than Steel Shaper's Gift, but it does both. In white decks that have swords packages, or even like Bogle, something like that.
Yep.
I feel like this could have a home. I also had Pious Evangel. I like this guy. He is 2 and a white. He's a flip card, which means I'm automatically predisposed to liking him at least a little bit. So he's 2 and a white for a 2/2. Whenever Pious Evangel or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So he's basically a Soul Sister. And you can pay 2, sack a permanent to transform him. He turns into the Wayward Disciple. And whenever Wayward Disciple or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So he's basically a Soul Sister that turns into a Blood Artist, but his flip side has 4 toughness. So
Right.
he's a lot more durable than the other Blood Artist choices. So I like him a lot.
Also, a lot of people were comparing him to the impressive clergyman from The Princess Bride.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
He's got the chops.
Mm-hmm.
He's got all the.
I mean, he has the bald spot, but that's where the hat goes anyway. So.
Sure, that's a non-issue.
Yeah, it really is.
Yep. Especially since he is not an actual person. So that's what we had for white. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff.
Right. But I think these were the ones that were...
Those are the ones that I really felt like potentially got there. All right, blue. New Jace. I mean, never bet against a Jace, but...
I'll bet against this one.
I mean, he's a 5-mana planeswalker. He's trying to live his life.
You can, finally have Opt in Modern. Just costs 5 mana. Sorcery speed.
Yep.
Or Unsummon. If the -2 ability was Void Snare instead of Unsummon, I'd be a little bit more okay with it, but it just doesn't do anything. People are trying to compare it to Ob Nixilis in Standard.
Right.
And that's a little bit more fair, but I think you could defend playing Ob Nixilis in Modern much easier than playing this 5-mana Jace in Modern. I do not like it in Modern at all.
As someone who plays Ob Nixilis in Modern, I would agree with that statement.
Well, Ob Nixilis at least kills creatures.
He does.
5-mana removal spells aren't good, but worst case scenario, at least it kills it instead of bouncing it.
Right.
And it's not like you're going to play your 5-mana Planeswalker, bounce it, and counter it. Unless you're already on turn 7 or 8, and you hit all of your land drops.
Yeah. Yep. So he's a potentially, I don't know. Somebody will try and play him.
I'm not a fan, and I don't even think he sees Standard play until Flip Jace rotates out.
Yeah. So there's a mill card, which we will not talk about on principle. Masterpiece we already talked about. Rattle Chains. Rattle Chains is my boy.
Oh, we're going to talk about the mill card not for the mill card itself, but I like the fact that one of the things that development seemed to do with this set was just kind of challenge themselves on what can we do with flip cards, because they can't do it on a lot of sets.
True.
They've done on Innistrad and 5 in Origins with Planeswalkers, and I think they just kind of clicked and they were like, what other types of cards can we make flip cards? So we'll talk about it when we get to them, but just the fact that they have a sorcery that turns into a creature.
Yeah, no, they need to, I mean, also, not for nothing, but they need to fill up that flip card sheet. So.
Sure, but they could have just added more creature draft commons, and they didn't. They explored new territory.
I'm not saying it's bad or that you are wrong. There's also just a practical element to it as well. So, Rattle Chains.
Yeah, put this on this list because I know you wanted to talk about it.
It's just all right. So 1 in a blue is a spirit, is a 2/1 flash flying. When Rattle Chains enters the battlefield, target spirit gains hexproof until end of turn, and you may cast spirit spells as though they had flash. One of the decks that I'm working on right now is Esper Spirits, and I feel like this guy might solve some of the problems that Geist of Saint Traft has, or the main problem that I have. Let me rephrase that. The main problem that I have with Geist right now is you play him on turn 3 and he does nothing, and then by turn 4 he's often either outclassed, so you'll get like 1 attack out of him. You know, like you'll smash in for 4, like the angel will hit, he'll usually get blocked, so you need to do something else with him. With Rattle Chains in play, at least you can flash him in at the end, you know, your opponent's end step, and essentially give him haste. And like you would play that card. If it was Geist of Saint Traft with haste, you would absolutely play that card. And there are a ton of other spirits that are really good. So
he doesn't end up having haste though, right? Because you're still attacking with him on turn 4. It's just that they're less incentivized to leave back a blocker.
Right.
Okay.
He doesn't, yeah, it's like, it's fake haste. You know, like he won't have summoning sickness when it comes to your turn.
Well, yeah, so it's not like you're attacking a turn early. You're just potentially attacking into less blockers.
Right. Fewer blockers. Grammar police. Hiya. Anafenza, Kintry Spirit. She's a spirit, and she's real good. Giving things flash is such a big deal, and it gives an entire class of cards flash.
Right.
I mean, it's not without the realm of possibility that there's a deck out there that wants to flash in Mirror Entity, buff your team, Alpha Strike. But just in a straight Esper control type shell with spirits as your creatures, this just adds a lot of value. And you know, even on just as a 2/1 flyer with flash, sometimes you just get there, right? Snapcaster Beats in the air have definitely won games.
Yeah, I think this is much more of a possibility because of its casting cost and stats. Like the 2/1 flyer for 2 with flash, is a big deal.
It's just all upside. Like that's the thing,
right? It's not like a lot of the tribal creatures are kind of embarrassing on their own.
Yeah, this
one gets around that.
Yep.
And as a turn 2 play, it's not the worst.
Well,
because it gives the other spirits flash. I mean, I mostly like it for its second ability too.
Right.
Like much beyond just Geist of Saint Traft. Like sometimes running other spirits or what is it? There's another Spirit Lord that costs 3 mana. 1 away in a
Drogskull Captain.
Yes. Being able to on turn 5 cast both of those is also really cool.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I have noticed playing Drogskull Captain is even though he gives all of your other creatures hexproof, he is extremely vulnerable to removal. And to play him on time, it's very difficult to protect. So, you know, being able to do exactly what you said and, you know, play Drogskull Captain, they play a removal spell on the stack, you flash in Rattle Chains, give him hexproof, and everybody's happy. Well, your opponent's not happy, but you're happy. And he is similar to Black's Manta, which automatically endears him to me because Black's Manta. Yeah. So that's Rattle Chains. I will be looking forward to putting him into the Esper Spirits deck, which has actually been doing okay. It's, you know, it's blue-white X control with discard and really good removal.
Sure.
Like Path and Doomblade are pretty much the nuts and gum of removal. Like, everything that doesn't die to Doom Blade dies to Path. So,
Usually, yeah.
like, that's nuts and gum together at last.
Path and Terminate.
Yep.
Making Mardu happen.
Same concept.
Slowly but surely.
It's getting there, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had any pickup. Oh, no, they did have a pickup in this set. A couple of them.
Oh, we'll have to bring them up once we get to
Yeah,
them.
we'll get there.
I wasn't too thrilled, but
yeah.
So I think I had Engulf the Shore, which I can sum up in a couple sentences. So 3 and a blue for an instant, return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. If you were running Aetherize, consider this instead.
Yep.
Depending on your deck. And that's pretty much it. This is an option for decks like Mono Blue Tron.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say.
If you're not playing a lot of creatures, and especially in something like Mono Blue Tron, where your creatures are also so big, like, you have a lot of islands in Mono Blue Tron.
Sure.
You're going to have a lot out. But you might not have 7 or 8 out to bounce your Sundering Titan.
Right.
And even if you did, I think you'd be happy because you just get to replay Sundering Titan. But
seems good.
The same thing with Wormcoil Engine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, by the time you're casting Wormcoil Engine, you probably don't have 6 islands. So this card in shells like that seem very good.
Mm-hmm.
At least another option to consider, because it's a pseudo Wrath in a color that doesn't get actual Wrath effects. So it's something to consider instead of Aetherize or the 5-mana one that puts the creatures on top or bottom of their owner's library. Aether Spouts.
Oh, right. Yep.
Because both of those involve attacking creatures,
right,
and this one does not, which makes it better in some ways and worse in others. So, that's that.
Yep. It's fine. Epiphany at the Drownyard. This is all you. I have no...
This card is worse than Fact or Fiction and better than Steam Augury. It is X and a blue. Reveal the top X cards plus 1 of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles. Put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So, for a single blue, you basically allow your opponent to sleight of hand for you.
Sure.
Once you start paying more mana, it becomes closer to Fact or Fiction, where you'll separate the 2 piles, basically dealing up what you need. And most of the time you are going to get it. You're giving your opponent a choice, but Fact or Fiction was a great card. Still is.
Okay.
This isn't as good. Steam Augury people were excited for. It was nowhere near powerful and full enough. Epiphany at the Drownyard, because it cost X, opens you up to a lot of things. I don't know if this is there yet. Personally, in Modern, I prefer Gifts Ungiven. I think that gives you a much better option.
Right.
So, we'll see. Personally, in Modern, I would prefer Gifts Are Given, or if you're in blue-white, Sphinx's Revelation.
Sure.
But this isn't a bad option by any means.
Yep.
And I do expect people to play it. I don't know how good it's going to be yet.
I mean, at least it's one color, too. Like, that's right. The other thing. Like, Steam Augury was 2 colors, mm-hmm. and those 2 colors, it was 2 red blue. So it was 2 red blue for 5 cards, so it is similar in volume of cards for the same casting cost.
Actually, it is the same, because Epiphany is X plus 1.
Ah.
Oh, no, it is 1 less, yeah, because of the blue. But even so,
I mean, that card saw no play. I mean, it didn't see any standard play, and it certainly didn't see any modern play.
The real benefit to Epiphany is the flexibility. If you want to X for 3, because you can, then you get to do that. If it's late in the game and you want to just X for everything, like if this is a late game play, it's going to be very good, because somewhere in those cards, especially like so late in the game, if you're just staring down a threat that's going to kill you, but your opponent's hellbent, and you have like a card and Epiphany of the Jognard in your hand, and you're just looking for a removal spell, if you Epiphany for enough at their end step, you're going to find a removal spell.
Yeah.
And you're going to find 2 removal spells and make your opponent give you one.
Yeah.
Like,
or you put Snapcaster in one pile and put the removal spell in the other one.
Like, so a lot of times this card is just always going to get you what you need.
Yep. Thing in the ice. We talked about it a little bit last time. I mean, it's really good. It's got an upheaval attached to it. It's
oh man, if only it had upheaval.
It's a 7.
To
okay,
it.
It's not a real upheaval, but it's. I mean, it's a real good card. I don't know. I mean, it's
good. It's not as good as people are saying. I said my sentiments in the last episode. I've warmed up maybe a tiny bit to the card, but they're mostly the same. Yeah. This is best in control mirrors, especially if it's
real good sideboard card.
Yeah, it could be a potentially really powerful sideboard card, but the unfortunate part is you have to build your deck around it.
Yep.
I think the best deck for it is still the blue-red Pyromancer Delverless Delver type of lists.
Yep.
Where it's basically now you'd be running Thing and Ice, Young Pyromancer, Snapcaster Mage as your main threats, maybe a Peen, Kieran, Nalar.
Yep.
But that's kind of the thing. Like, you have Thing and Ice, but most of those games with the deck that you're playing, you don't need Thing in the Ice because Peen, Kieran, Grim Lavamancer, Young Pyromancer, Snapcaster Mage is going to get you in the same winning positions a lot of the times.
Right.
Thing in the Ice only adds a couple other opportunities, and it's more so based around the bouncing than it is the finishers. Yeah. I like the fact that the actual reason why I warmed up a tiny bit to it is because it bounces your Snapcasters back.
Sure.
And I do like that. But other than that, it's hard to really...
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's as good as people say. I do think it'll see play. And I do think the blue-red, not Delver shell is definitely a good home for it.
You're going to have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
If you go to an event, people are going to be playing this card. Whether or not they should be objectively playing that card is irrelevant to the fact that you will have to face it down. And if you are not prepared to fight a 7/8...
Well, not even that. You should just be having unconditional removal if you can. And if not, you should be killing your opponent before Thing in the Ice is turned on.
So what I'm hearing is you should just play black.
I mean, sometimes. Or white. Path to Exile kills a 7/8.
It's true.
As much as it kills anything else.
Fair enough. Invasive Surgery, we talked about a little bit last time. It's the
Envelop.
Yeah, it's the Envelop that comes with a free cranial extraction. So, I mean, that is a playable sideboard card.
Yep, Invasive Surgery, single blue, instant, counter sorcery spell, Delirium. So if you have the 4 or more card types in your graveyard, you get to search their hand, library, graveyard for every other copy of that spell that you countered. So in Modern, you sure can grab all escape shifts.
Yep.
Or Bring to Lights, or Wrath effects if you're up against a Wrath deck.
Yep.
Like, counter that Anger of the Gods and never worry about Anger of the Gods again.
Yeah.
And also the free information of, I got rid of the Anger of the Gods, but they also have this singleton copy of Damnation. I guess I have to play around one Damnation.
Right. Yeah, no, cranial extraction effects are not to be underestimated. I jacked somebody today with a Extirpate because I was playing the Spirits deck. They played Thirst for Knowledge. I remanded it and then extirpated their Thirst for Knowledge. So I ripped the one out of their hand and the other one's out of their deck. Card's real good.
No, it's good. And like Invasive Surgery, only 1 mana.
Yep. I had 2 honorable mentions in here is Essence Flux. It's a single blue for an instant, exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is real good in Esper Spirits. And, any other kind of spirit tribal deck. It saves your creature from a removal spell and gives you a free +1/+1 counter. Because I like tribal decks, and there is a good spirit tribal deck out there that's forming. I just like this card.
Alrighty.
Also, sweet art.
Yeah.
So, if you like blinks, if you like cloud shit, if you like Otherworldly Journey, but you're playing a lot of spirits, this is way better. All right, black. Welcome home. Black, not surprisingly, fairly deep on the goth world of Innistrad. Relentless Dead we talked about last time. Behold the Beyond is unplayable.
I mean, it's like 7 mana win the game in Commander.
Yep.
So you got that going for you.
Great in Commander. Mind Rock Demon, I already talked about. I like it a lot. I don't know if it's going to really see a lot of constructed play. But I like it anyways. Diregraph Colossus is the first one on the list. Diregraph Colossus is 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie giant. 1 relevant and 1 not so relevant creature type. There's some giant tribal cards from Lorwyn block.
Yeah, there are.
Diregraph Colossus enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each zombie card in your graveyard. Whenever you cast a zombie spell, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. Oh boy.
Yeah. So this is one of those cards that's only good in obviously their respective decks.
Sure.
But if you were trying to push zombies, this is basically it. More than like any of the other, like compared to Relentless Dead, this card does way more for zombies in Modern than Relentless Dead. This card has 2 upsides for zombie tribal. And already, like, let's face it, it's never going to be a 2/2 for 3.
Yeah.
Like, if you're having a bad time, it'll be a 4/4. In the deck that it goes in. Like,
It's like Black Knight of the Reliquary.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the same discussion that we had about that card.
Yeah, but even better because you just continue to get value. Like if you get to play Diregraph Colossus and then untap with it, and you have like grave crawlers in your yard, you get to cast them from your yard and get tokens.
Yes,
like that's just
card silly.
This card I think is very good, obviously in its respected deck. The card's very good. I don't know how good the deck will be, but this is definitely a push. If you're a fan of Zombie Tribal and that's like a pet deck of yours, congrats on the fantastic new toy. Like,
and in the Lotleth Troll, Varels the Scar Striped, any of those type decks, any deck that contains those 2 cards would love to have this.
Yeah, even the blue-black versions, like.
Yep. Yeah, the Cemetery Reaper, I think, is the lord for those colors.
There's a couple. There's also Diregraph Captain.
Oh, that's right.
Gives all of your zombies +1/+1, and whenever a zombie you control dies, drain 1, or it might be just opponent loses a life.
Could be.
And then it has Death Touch.
Yep.
So, also a good card. Now you just have another really good 3-drop.
Yeah. So, I would like to talk about From Under the Floorboards. It is basically one of the longest names that they've ever given a card. It's 3 black for sorcery. Put 3 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped, and you gain 3 life. And it has Madness XBB. If the Madness cost was paid, and instead put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped, and you gain X life. So it's Black Sphinx's Rev, except you make zombies instead of draw cards. I like it. It's way better than like Empty the Pits. It's,
and I kind of personally wrote it off as a good quality commander card. But besides that, I don't really see. like it's odd that there's a mono black card with life gain.
Yep.
So it does have that going for it. But other than that, I wasn't really sure. I didn't really feel anything for this card. Like, cool name, cool art, and like objectively the card itself is also cool, but from a modern perspective, I don't see it.
Tooth Collector we talked about.
Chord for it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's better than
Orzhov
Pontiff, and sometimes it's worse. And you're in a chord deck, so just get whichever one's better.
Yep. Chord Calling's a real good card.
Sure is.
Real good card. Asylum Visitor. Asylum Visitor is amazing. So Asylum Visitor is 1 in black for a vampire wizard. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Madness 1B, and it is a 3/1. So you're just going to be drawing a lot of cards.
If you are playing 8-rack.
And here we are. So it's better than Blood Scrivener. It is not better than Dark Confidant. It is conditionally better, I guess, in very specific situations. The fact that you get to draw cards on your opponent's upkeep as well is relevant, and I mean that's just
the good thing is, I guess, beyond 8-rack, because it triggers on each player's upkeep, so it triggers on yours if you have no cards in hand. I think it's an important thing to realize, because ideally in 8-rack your opponent's also hellbent.
Oh sure. Yeah.
So you're not actually drawing a card every upkeep unless you have an instant speed spell that you're casting on their turn. So
makes Funeral Charm a lot better.
It does. But I mean, I don't know. It's 8-rack's new Dark Confidant.
Yep. It has 3 power, and 3 power is very, very good.
No, it is.
To the Slaughter we talked about. It's not that good.
No. Which is weird, because it's another one of those... It's a borderline trap card, and that's why I think it was important that we talk about it. Because it looks so powerful until you play it in a game. And I don't know, giving your opponent always... There are definitely narrow situations, and it's very easy to picture them, where To the Slaughter is just the one thing that can completely dig you out of an unwinnable situation. When you're staring down... Like, when your opponent's board is just lands Tarmogoyf Liliana, yes, this card's fantastic. But how many times are you going to have this card in hand and be able to cast it against that board state?
I mean, sometimes. Sometimes you're going to get them, but...
A non-zero amount, but the amount of times where you're going to be
playing a 3-mana Edict.
Right. A 3-mana Edict, which is instant speed, I guess. Sure. But I think there are better cards, especially in black, that are just better options in modern.
Yeah. Yep. I wanted to give a... so Elusive Tormentor we talked about last time. It's my new main deck Ensnaring Bridge 8-rack card. Gisa's Bidding I didn't put on the list. No, I did. I put it on my side. Oh, Heir of Falconwrath. We can talk about her. Heir of Falconwrath is actually a card that we have already talked about. She's the flip madness enabler.
Oh, sure.
Just value, super value.
Yeah.
It's 1 in a black for a creature vampire. You can discard a card to flip her. She becomes a 3/2 flyer, which is a very good thing.
Yes.
You know, I mean, she's a delver, but you can flip her the turn that she comes into play.
Sure.
You know, I mean, like...
Well, the bigger thing isn't exactly when you're flipping her, it's the fact that you can control it 100% as opposed to Delver, which is more of a 50% in Modern.
Yep. Where else? What else are we talking?
Ghoulsteed?
Yeah, Ghoulsteed. Bad horse, bad horse, bad horse, bad horse.
Oh, you've picked Ghoulsteed for Bad Horse? I picked Stallion of Ashmouth for Bad Horse.
I feel like Stallion of Ashmouth. I gotta look. The fact that there's more than one bad horse in this set is pretty great.
Yeah, so I only
Stallion
like
of Ashmouth.
saw.
It's a nightmare horse.
And the art looks a little bit more, because let's face it, Ghoulsteed's a little beat up. You can't
he still rides across the nation. Now I will give you that the Stallion of Ashmouth as a nightmare horse is probably closer to the Thoroughbred of Sin than Ghoulsteed.
Ghoulsteed just looks a little beat up.
Well, but here's the thing about Ghoulsteed. I would actually see Ghoulsteed as being fringe playable, whereas whatever Stallion of Ashmouth,
Delirium gets +1 to your next if there are 4 markers.
Yeah, like it's Stallion of Ashmouth as an expensive pump creature that has conditional pump and starts out as a 3/3 for 4.
I'd play it in limited.
Sure, I'd play it in limited too, but like I said, I would actually consider Ghoulsteed to be fringe playable in Modern.
In Modern?
Yeah.
Let's see. Discard 2 cards, return.
So it's a 3-mana 4/4, basically. So discard 2 cards, return Ghoulsteed from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So you can do it at instant speed. I mean, I could very easily see Ghoulsteed in a deck where you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll pitch this to Liliana or discard it to whatever. And then just at some point you're like, oh, I got a couple free mana and a couple, cards in my hand.
Yeah.
I might as well get this 4/4 back at your end step and then smash you in the face with it. And then if they kill it, just do it again. So, like I said, I actually do. I like Ghoulsteed as a fringe playable card. Geese's Bidding. Geese's Bidding got on my list just straight up on rate because it is 4 power and 4 toughness for 3 mana off of Madness. So it's 2 black for a sorcery. Put 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, and it has Madness 2 black, or 2 and a black. In a Madness deck, getting 2 bodies with 4 power and 4 toughness for 3 mana is great. And really and truly, even kind of getting it for 4 mana is not the worst. You'd obviously prefer to play it off of Madness, but getting those stats for that, upside is good. It's like almost Arrogant Worm, but not quite as good.
Yeah.
But I mean, Arrogant Worm is almost too good.
I mean, at the time
it was super good.
Pretty good.
Yep. Hey, we still have Reckless Worm.
We do.
A card that I will very much play. There's so much more stuff in black. Pale Rider of Trostad. This was on my honorable mention list as a 3/3 for 2 with 1 or possibly 2 upsides. It's 1 and a black for 3/3 with Skulk, so it can't be blocked by creatures with power greater than 3, or whatever its power ends up being. And when it enters the battlefield, discard a card. There's plenty of decks that want to discard cards. There's plenty of decks that want, cheap creatures with upsides. I also had Call the Bloodline on my honorable mention list. It's 1 and a black for an enchantment. You can pay 1, discard a card. Put a 1/1 black vampire knight creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only once per turn, which is fine. They phrase it in a way that makes it seem like a downside, but if you look at like Bitter Blossom, you can only activate it once per turn, or like it only activates once per turn anyway. So,
Sure.
And they don't have lifelink, and they're not knights, and they're not vampires. So, with all the vampire stuff, even just the vampire stuff in this set, Indulgent Aristocrat, I think his name is, the 1-drop that puts, Indulgent Aristocrat, 1 black for 1/1 lifelink. He has pay 2, sack a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Like that, especially at uncommon, like that's insane.
Well, right. A lot of these, especially Call the Bloodline and the writer we just talked about, both are uncommon as Madness enablers.
Yep.
Because you need them to be uncommon in order to make the Madness deck okay for limited. The bigger thing to look at is definitely Call the Bloodline being an enchantment. It's recurring Madness enabler.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the problems with things like Pale Rider is it's when it comes into play, so you're going to have to spend the 2 mana on it and then also have mana open to take advantage of Madness.
Sure.
And that's not something you can really do. Obviously, one of the best Madness enablers on accident in Modern is Liliana the Veil.
Yep.
But you're not going to be able to go Liliana plus and pay for Madness 90% of the time because you want to play her on turn 3. But that doesn't mean you can't minus her, hope she sticks in Madness next turn. So if you are looking at some sort of Madness deck, definitely prioritize recurring options for Madness instead of just the comes into play, do something. Or even something like Heir of Falconwrath, which we already talked about. The fact that you can only use her ability once. But also don't feel like you have to play her and immediately use her. Wait to untap, maybe.
Yeah, I wanted to also give an honorable mention to the Black Vessel. There's a cycle at common in here in this set called the Vessels of blank, and there's one for each color. The black one is Vessel of Malignity. It's 1 black for an enchantment, and it has 1 black, sacrifice, target opponent exiles 2 cards from his or her hand. Activate it on any time you could play sorcery. So it exiles. It is an enchantment. So if you are playing the Delirium deck, if you're playing a Delirium deck that doesn't really have, like, there's not a ton of enchantments that really get played. So if you can just have this as a value enchantment, exile is relevant, So if you can just play this out, and then at some point you just go, oh, boop, when they're down to 2 cards, it is potentially better than Wrenchmind on, as the game wears on. So it's not unplayable potentially in the right deck. Man, just basically every black card from this set has something that I like about it. So rather than just going through every single black card, just go to the Wizards website or go to Mythic Spoiler and just look at all the black cards and think, man, card's actually pretty good, because most of them are actually pretty good. Like, I even like there's a 4 and a black vampire 3/5 that has Madness 2 and a black. #value. Love that card.
I mean, like I said, they needed to push the Madness deck in Limited, and I think the Madness deck in Limited is very strong. It all will depend on how much it's fought over. Like, this set is already shaping up to be one that looks incredibly fun to draft, so this just kind of brought it all home.
All right, moving on. Next, red. Red mythics, a little soft. A little soft in the old red mythic department.
Yeah, there's not much to talk about.
Yep. They got a 4/9 that makes everything deal double damage.
If a source would deal damage to you, it deals double damage.
Yep.
And if it would deal damage to itself, it deals double damage.
Yep. Some people are trying to brew like an assault formation deck with this, where you can play assault formation and then play this on turn 4 and swing 9, which is fine. I mean, it's not, but like, what's the rest of that deck? You know?
I don't know. Feels like there are much better ways to swing for 9 on turn 4.
Yes, there are.
So
many. And then the Wolf of Devil's Breach is just a really expensive card advantage card.
Isn't actually, it's not even card advantage.
Oh, no,
it's the so when it attacks, you can pay 1 in a red and discard a card. If you do, it deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to discarded cards converted mana cost. If it could deal damage to players, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, you need to play him, have him stick. I mean, he's a 5/5 for 5.
Sure.
So I don't know if you can somehow get him out quickly, and then untap with him and pay 2. But it's when it attacks, so it's not like you can abuse it and discard multiple cards. You're just discarding the 1 card, and I mean, if it's not blocked and you discard exactly Emrakul.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. In the Emrakul Skred deck with Boros Reckoner.
There's just, it doesn't, no. The red mythics in this set were just
really bad.
Incredibly underwhelming. Like, there's no sugarcoating it.
Yeah. Just bad.
Doesn't mean some of the rares weren't pretty great, though.
Some of the rares are really good. All right, so Gyre Reach Bandit, Werewolf, all the werewolf stuff. So you can, if you want to talk about this.
Sure.
one.
I'm pretty sure I added this to the list basically because of the werewolves.
Yep.
So 3/2 for 3, haste, so already a fine body, and then the werewolf ability at the upkeep, no spells are cast, transform it. It transforms, and whenever a werewolf enters a battlefield under your control, you may transform it. Turns into a 4/3. So, yeah, it's real good.
Yep.
This is one of those things where it's... The fact that it costs 3 is really relevant, because it fits in both Collected Company, which in the werewolf deck, you're green and red.
Yeah.
So Collected Company already fits.
Yep.
Some werewolf decks were also running Aether Vial, and a lot of other key werewolf cards are at 3 mana.
Right.
So ticking up to 3 is already a good place to be. And then the ability to just play your werewolves and immediately transform them just gets so much value.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there was a way to play her and then have it transform and when you untap and play Huntmaster of the Fells,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a very good curve.
Mm-hmm.
So this one definitely, I mean, very, very narrow card, but very powerful in the deck that it belongs in.
Yep. Oh, Vessel Volatility. So another vessel. This is a ritual vessel that is your...
It is almost a ritual vessel, so it's very important to realize that this doesn't actually give you any mana. It is an enchantment that costs 1 in a red, and you pay 1 in a red to sacrifice it to add 4 red. So if you're doing it all in one turn, the only thing it does is potentially filter non-red mana into red mana.
Sure.
What this really does is it helps you set up for a big storm turn, if that's something you are looking at. This is a potential card for something that's trying to ramp up bigger.
Right.
It does... We don't see a lot of ritual effects that give you 2 additional mana.
Right.
So casting this as an enchantment on turn 2 and setting up for a big storm turn could be something potentially powerful.
Well, it ramps you 3 to 5.
2 to 4.
Well, no, it's so if you play it on turn 2,
yeah,
and then turn 3, you hit your land drop,
if
you
you're
sack
just
it.
Playing, right. So if you're playing this as that's brings up another good point. You could play this as a fair card.
Yep.
This I wouldn't be upset to see this in something like the mono red Skred Koth of the Hammer lists. That are just trying to play this. And with the Simian Spirit Guides, you might just play it on turn 1, right, and then turn 2 have 4 mana.
Yep.
So that's another possibility. So I expect to see this card see some play, but the decks need to be changed and tweaked to allow for it.
Yeah. It's an unusual.
Yeah.
It's an unusual effect. Like.
And oddly enough, I don't think it's the best card for Storm and Innistrad in this set.
Nope, I don't think so either. So why don't you talk about Sin Prodder? Because I know that you want to like this card, but you are kind of disappointed by it.
Oh, no, I do like this card. I think it's just very, very specific.
It's got a lot of text, and that usually means the card's exceptional. That's how I understand the game.
I don't know. There's not a lot of text on Delver of Secrets. Anyway, so a 3/2 menace for 2 and a red. Fine. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent may have you put that card into your graveyard. If that player does, Sin Prodder deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. So it has the potential to draw you an extra card with some caveats.
Yeah.
So immediately you want to slam this guy into a deck running things like Goblin Dark Dwellers and Zoran and all of these big expensive cards, so that your opponent is going to let you draw cards because they don't want to take 4 to 5 damage or more.
Yep.
The problem with playing this guy in a big mana deck is that your opponent also gets to put lands in your graveyard for no damage.
Right.
And you are drawing no cards. The only benefit to that is that you are not drawing a land, which is great if you didn't want a land, but it's not so great if that's what you were trying to dig for. If you're trying to hit your 4th land drop and your opponent just milled a bunch for free with Sin Prodder, you're not going to end up very well. So Sin Prodder is very good in low curve situations.
It reminds me of almost like Countryside Crusher. Kind of does a similar thing in terms of the land. It's like once you're established and you're like, I never want to hit a land drop again, you slam Countryside Crusher and you'll never draw another land, and you get rewarded for it. So in that scenario, I mean, he really is like he's like a quote unquote grown up Vexing Devil. You know, he has like a pseudo Punisher card element to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's neat, and I'm a huge advocate of anything that has 3 power and menace.
Sure. Because
Goblin Freerunner has won me a ton of games, specifically because of those 2 factors. 3 power with menace really pushes through damage, like more than anything else other than just unblockable or whatever. It's a really strong kind of like sweet spot in terms of evasion and damage. So, I mean, I like it. I don't know if I have a home for him.
I do.
Okay.
Grixis Delph.
Oh yeah, it was a good deck. It's already a good deck.
It's already a good deck, and this allows you to basically have a card that is better than Dark Confidant in that deck, because you couldn't afford to run Dark Confidant because you were running 6 drops in Tasigur and 7 drop in Gurmag Angler. But now Sin Prodder means your opponent's either taking 6 or 7 so you have your really high converted mana cost cards, but they're really only costing you 1 or 2 mana each, and the rest of your deck curves out at 3.
Right.
So Sin Prodder is one of your most expensive spells, and your opponent taking 2 to have you not draw Terminate sometimes isn't the worst when you're running Snapcaster Mages and Jace Vryn's Prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
So in something like the new Grixis non-Delver decks that are running 5 to 6 Snapcaster Jace effects, as well as Call against Command to get back creatures and Delve creatures, which work very, very well with Sin Prodder.
Right.
Sin Prodder is just a very, very good card advantage effect.
Yep.
So that's where I think you should fit. I've already talked to people about why it's probably not good in Mardu. It's probably not good in Jund.
Yeah.
But in something like Grixis with a very low curve, Jeskai could also be up there because you basically need Snapcaster Jace and your red. So your blue-red, and then fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
The problem with Jeskai is you don't have the Delve creatures, which isn't great.
Mm.
Because that's what also, like, because there's going to be a time where your opponent's just like at 10 or less, and you flip a Gurmag Angler to Sin Prodder, now you're just drawing 2 cards. Like, they don't even have a choice.
Right.
Because now they're just dead to bolt. So, definitely not bad at all.
Yep. Red, what else we got here? Harness the Storm. It is kind of Past in Flames, kind of Pyromancer's Ascension. It's like it's a weaker version of both of those cards, which are borderline too good. So
Put together, though, which makes it better.
Like, is something that is almost as good as something that's too good, does that come out in the wash and become still good? I don't know. Talk it. This is another like Storm card, which is outside of my area of expertise.
Right. So this is very, very interesting, and I think this is the best like thing for Storm in Modern in quite some time. It works very well with Pyromancer's Ascension too, because the key thing is, so it's 2 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast target card with the same name as that spell from your graveyard. In parentheses, you still pay the costs. So what that means is it doesn't exile the card when you cast it from your graveyard. So if you have a Cataxian Probe in your graveyard, right, and you cast Cataxian Probe from your hand, you get to also cast the Cataxian Probe from your graveyard, paying its costs, but it stays in your graveyard. Which means if you also have Pyromancer's Ascension out, you cast 2 copies with it in the graveyard, and now Pyromancer's Ascension's turned on.
Yep.
So it works well with Pyromancer's Ascension. One big problem being the fact that now you have a 2-mana enchantment and a 3-mana enchantment. But it's also just good because it helps some of your setup turns.
Right.
You're going to be able to go Sleight of Hand or Serum Visions into something, and then eventually play this, and then on turn 4, do it and cast it again and set up. The problem is costing 3 mana. Generally in Storm, you want to be going off on turn 3 and turn 4, and if you take off turn 3 to have a better setup, like a really amazing setup turn, like
right.
if you have Pyromancer's Ascension on 2 and this on turn 3, you're going to win on turn 5.
Right.
Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't. That's not always going to be fast enough, and you're just going to lose to a lot of the other really fast decks like Affinity or Infect. And this card's just not as good. So, if anything, this might get relegated to the sideboard, and you bring it in against control and or grindy matchups, because, I mean, it's hard for a control deck to stop your spells when you just have another copy you get to cast from your graveyard. So
yeah, I mean, I could see playing this on turn 4, or like turn 5 with Manamorphose, or turn 4 with...
Well, you still have to pay the cost of the card in your graveyard.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So it's not like you're getting it for free. So You really, like, you almost have to take a turn off to set up.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily bad when you're against your Jund opponent or your Grixis opponent.
Yep.
Like, if it resolves and sticks, you're going to be in a good position. But I don't know where else. Like, as a value card, it is also good. Like, it's just getting more value from your graveyard. I don't really see... I don't know. I could be missing something as far as other decks that want this effect. I mean, it is a generic good card. Obviously, in any blue-red commander deck this goes in. I don't know of any generic blue-red deck in Modern that this just slides into, though.
It plays really well with Snapcaster.
Does it?
Sure does.
Why?
So you have this out.
Yeah.
You play Snapcaster, targeting Bolt. If there's 2 bolts in your yard...
It's whenever you cast an instant from your hand. Yeah. Yep.
Well, that other way would probably be too good.
Yeah, probably.
Especially for 3 mana.
Yeah.
Like better Past in Flames. All right, got it. So,
yeah.
Still kind of good.
Well, no, like it is very good. It's just that the decks might be much more narrowed than it could have been.
It's not broken.
Right.
Okay.
And when a card's biggest flaw is that it's not broken.
It's still pretty... Yeah, it still usually ends up to be pretty good.
Yep.
I had... Oh, Dual Shot we both had. Dual Shot is a slightly worse Forked Bolt.
So it's weird. I don't think it's definitely not strictly worse.
No.
It's different. So it's 1 single red, deals 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. So Forked Bolt deals 2 damage divided as you choose, but it can also target players.
Right.
So you potentially lose a damage with Dual Shot, and you can't target players. So it's never going to be shock. The benefit that it has is that it's an instant and not a sorcery.
Right.
So I don't know 100% where this goes, but it's definitely not something that should be overlooked.
Right.
Especially against things like Affinity and Infect, which have lots of 1 toughness creatures that you might want. Like, having instant speed is definitely huge.
Yeah.
And being able to split it amongst 2 X1s is also very huge.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the power of running 4 main deck gut shots because I've done it. I have now like 2 decks that I'm running on Magic Online that do it, and it's extremely powerful. Right. And this is, slightly better, slightly worse, but just being able to pick off 2 X1s.
Right.
Like my game 1 in a deck where I'm main decking 4 gut shots, my game 1 versus Affinity and Infect is amazing.
Yeah.
And normally that's where they're the strongest. So to be able to not have to just give up my game 1 by getting steamrolled by whatever they have, it's really, it makes a huge difference. So, if somebody goes turn 1 Noble Hierarch, turn 2 Glistener Elf, and then you just go, oh, all right, play something, Dual Shot, kill both your guys. I mean, that's such a huge setback for them, especially considering in that deck especially, they probably kept a hand that was those 2 creatures and then pump spells. So they either have to spend pump spells to save them or get set back so far that they now have to draw their next creature, which could be because they don't even run a ton of creatures.
Yep.
That's why they mulligan so much, because they've got to have some mix of threats and pump spells, otherwise their deck just doesn't work.
Right.
I wanted to give an honorable mention to Fiery Temper, even though it's already in Modern. It was time shifted. It's 1 red for Lightning Bolt. It has Madness for red. So it didn't see any play previously with all the new Madness stuff. If there's a Madness deck that has red in it that already has 4 Lightning Bolts, it's better than Rift Bolt.
Sure.
because that's right. I would play that before I would play Riftbolt or Burst Lightning.
Sure, I would too. I would also play Terminate and Kolaghan's Command over any of those options in the Madness deck. Like, it's a good card that's just always going to be overshadowed.
Yeah. Tormenting Voice got some sweet new art.
Sure.
Unrelated. Skin Invasion. This card. Oh, I love it so much. So my obsession with 3/4s, I feel like is well documented.
Sure.
And Skin Invasion is single red for an enchantment. Enchanted creature attacks each combat if able. When enchanted creature dies, return Skin Invasion to the battlefield transformed under your control. So here's just a ton of things. It's a single mana, which is great. It is enchant any creature, not just enchant your creatures.
Right.
So if someone goes Noble Hierarch, you go Skin Invasion. Next turn, it swings in, you kill it with your anything, and then you get a free 3/4. Right. Great. 2-for-1. Everybody loves a 2-for-1. If you're in a pinch and you have a sack outlet, you're just like, I'm up against the wall. I've got a whatever. Viscera Seer out. You go, so red, Viscera Seer, sack the token.
Yep.
Get a 3/4. It's just, man, I really like it. I really, really, really like it. So just as essentially a 1-mana 3/4, it is hella playable. Also, let us not forget for Delirium, and also not for nothing for Tarmogoyf.
Sure.
Just having a bunch of enchantments that are actually worth playing that put themselves in the graveyard essentially makes Tarmogoyf a lot better.
Yeah.
Because normally they don't see a ton of play. I had honorable mention also Scourge Wolf. 2/2 first strike for 2 that gets double strike when you have Delirium turned on. As a 2-drop in a red deck wins. Like if you ever played a deck with Ash Zealot or something like that, it's fine. Burn from Within also got an honorable mention on my list. It's basically Disintegrate. It's X red for a sorcery. Burn from Within deals X damage to target creature or player. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it loses Indestructible until end of turn. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So you can play this post-combat against a creature with Indestructible that has damage marked on it. Right?
I mean, it's sorcery speed, so depending, if they block or...
Yeah, so if your opponent blocks with a creature that has Indestructible...
Sure.
Let's say it's whatever. Say it's a 4/4, and you attack into it with a 3-power creature. If it has 3 damage marked on it, you go Burn from Within for X = 1. It loses Indestructible, it dies, and it gets exiled. So, potential applications, like I said, it's not a main deck card, but there are plenty of indestructible creatures.
Is already in Modern, and there aren't enough indestructible creatures, so I feel like it was a big upgrade or anything.
I don't know. I mean, it's notable. It's notable in the sense that there are not really many other effects that make creatures lose Indestructible.
I mean, I brought up like Stoic Builder, so obviously we should have the ability to bring up Burn from Within.
Sure. So, like I said, I wouldn't, I don't know if it's not a 4 of main deck card, but it might be a 2 of sideboard card against in Soul Artifact decks.
No.
In Soul Artifact.
Blightsteel Colossus with it.
You could kill Blightsteel Colossus with it. Because apparently that's coming like a freight train.
I got my Chinese copies.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
It has a lot of text for it to be a foreign card. Like, I really try and keep the
man.
foreign cards pretty simple.
I normally do, but no, not this one. I just want as many judge calls of, what do you mean it says that?
Are you serious? Does he just win this turn? Yep. Yeah, you do. And then the other sort of honorable mention is Falcon Wrath Gorger. It's a 2-1-for-1 Vampire Berserker. Each vampire creature card you own that isn't on the battlefield has madness, and the madness cost is equal to its mana cost. I do not know how to appropriately evaluate this card. Because it doesn't even seem like it's good and limited. Like it seems like it's designed to be a constructed card, but I can't think of even a theoretical constructed deck that like really needs this guy.
No, this is another one of the cards where we can just write it off as it's a very unique effect.
Yep.
Someone might break it one day.
Yep.
And that's basically it.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, man, that's a pretty crazy effect. All right. Green. So I have a lot of feelings about the green cards in this set, and Traverse the Ulvenwald is not one of those cards. So I'm going to have you talk about it.
Man. So 1 green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So land tutors helps fix it. The fact that it's only 1 green helps it. Then it has Delirium. If there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, instead search your library for a creature or land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So early game, it fixes your mana. Late game, it's Worldly Tutor, but better. If that makes any sense. Actually,
okay.
It's closer to Green Sun Zenith, because you're adding an extra green mana to go and get a creature from your deck, and you can potentially cast it that turn. So if you have 7 mana, you can go tutor up a 6-drop and cast a 6-drop. The weak spot obviously being like your opponent has 2 opportunities to counter something,
right?
Whatever. This card is definitely much more for constructed play than it is limited play. I mean, obviously it's a rare, but I feel like this card is just very good. It's aggressively costed for sure.
Yes.
Like, I can't imagine... I don't know. It just seems very good to me. Especially in some sort of... It's much better in a more of a fair toolbox deck than something like a Court of Calling Collected Company combo deck, which is kind of the thing. But other than that...
But it could sit, in a mid-range deck that has a variety of card types. So that's the other thing, right? It's like you still have to be able to reliably turn on Delirium.
Well, Delirium is so easy to turn on in Modern.
Oh no, it is.
Between fetch lands, you're probably running instants, or sorceries, and creatures. Like the core 4 are very easy to turn on Delirium. I think 4 was definitely the right number for Delirium. And then if you feel like you're not close enough, you can always get closer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
yeah, no, I mean the card is really good. It's really good. There are not a lot of creature tutors that are cheap, and that is a big deal.
Yep.
So,
well, like I said, this is the effective casting cost of Green Sun Zenith,
right?
Because it's the 1 green and X being whatever mana you're going to plan to cast a creature on.
Yep.
And the other part is you can always wait to cast a creature if you're 1 short.
Yeah. So I guess it's actually almost kind of better than Green Sun Zenith because it gets any creature.
Right, in that way, the tutor ability is definitely bigger.
Yeah. Complicated. See, like I said, I have a lot of feeling, and actually it turns out that I have feelings about this card too. Because originally, I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's Caravan Vigil. And...
But because in Modern it's so easy to turn on Delirium,
Right.
and because it's so cheap. And the problem with Green Sun's Zenith wasn't always the toolbox ability, it was the ability to go turn 1, get Dryad Arbor,
Right.
and ramp for so free so early.
Yep.
So without that being a problem, both because you're not going to have Delirium on turn 1, and I mean, I guess you could actually search up Dryad Arbor with it, but that isn't a good play at the point. So it fixes the problems with Green Sun Zenith, and it would be a good include in any toolbox deck.
Yep. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it as like maybe a 2 of to start off with. It's probably one of those cards that will start off slow, and then people will be like, oh, like Kolaghan's Command, right? Other people were like, oh, it's good. We'll put 1 in. And they're like, oh, wow, this card's a real blowout. I'll put 2 in. And then they're like, oh, it's probably a 3 of. I think that's where we landed. Most decks that play it
depends
like
on the
2 or
deck.
3 of.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
So that's the trajectory that I predict. Yep. Silver for Partisan. Man, I like this card.
It's sweet.
So good. So Silver for Partisan is 2 and a green for a Wolf Warrior. It is a 2/2 with Trample. And whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Bananas. Like, green token creators are not... Well, let me rephrase that. Non-elf green token creators are not normally great, because normally you're making saprolings.
Sure.
But if you have this and Wild Defiance, which was the first thing that I thought of, somebody was like, oh man, this card's really great. And I was like, man, you know what makes this card super great? Wild Defiance. Because then if they're trying to hit it with a lightning bolt, it doesn't die and you get a free 2/2. So I would put those 2 cards together in a deck.
Yeah, so this one definitely caught my eye because obviously it's good in the werewolf deck.
Yep.
Which we wanted to like make nods to throughout this episode. But beyond that, it could be just good in other decks that haven't really been explored or brewed yet. Yep. So the potential is there.
It's a 2 for 1.
Yeah.
You know, like it is going to get value even if your opponent kills it.
Right.
So it's like baby Thragtusk.
Right.
like super baby Thragtusk.
Well, no, it's grown up young wolf. It's not young anymore.
There you go. But plays amazingly well with young wolf.
Sure does.
Like turn 1 young wolf, turn 2 question mark, turn 3 this, shebang bang.
All right, moving on.
Second Harvest.
I can sum that up in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
It's probably fair for Modern. It's probably not going to get broken. It's 4 mana for an instant. For each token you control, put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. So currently there's not any real strategies, especially in green, that make a bunch of tokens and want to populate all of them all at the same time. But 4 mana is conceivable for that powerful of an effect. We shall wait and see.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is like... It reminds me of like growing ranks, like that kind of stuff, and that sort of stuff usually doesn't get there.
Right.
So, Moonlight Hunt. I'm looking at just the green, so my stuff is out of order. Hold on.
Oh, that's fine. I had like 2 sentences of Deathcap Cultivator. 2 mana for a 2/1, taps for black or green. Delirium, it gets Death Touch.
I like that guy a lot.
Yeah, I like him. In Modern, it's just worse than Sylvan Caryatid, but it's not bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's...
The fact that like sometimes mana dorks are just awful draws late game.
Yep.
This creature is less awful, so it's built-in mitigation for that problem.
Yep. All right, Moonlight Hunt. Where are we?
Moonlight Hunt
there it
is
is.
1 in green for an instant. Choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf deals damage equal to its power to that creature.
Whoa.
So, werewolf deck.
Yeah. Yep. That's a...
Yup.
Wow.
Because it's also a one-sided fight.
Right.
So, it's not like your creatures are at risk here. And you could potentially kill something big. Like, if you have... I mean, let's go back to the creature we just talked about. I already forgot its name. The silver fur.
Yep.
Other word. If you have that in 2 tokens, you can now kill most Tarmogoyfs and Tasigur and Gurmag Angler for 2 mana.
Yep.
So, seems good.
It's each not target. That would have been really
well,
good.
that's if it targeted, sure. But yeah, it doesn't need to be that good.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I kill your Tarmogoyf and get 5
tokens.
5/2/2 wolves. Swingboard kill you. Mulgrass Scavenger. Yes. All right. This card will immediately see play with good reason. It is a Tarmogoyf, kind of.
Oh, that's what... I don't actually know its name, so it threw me for a
Moldgraph
second.
Scavenger.
All right.
So it is 1 and a green for a fungus. It is a 0/4, and when you have Delirium, it gets +3/+0. So it's a 2 mana 3/4. It doesn't die to bolt when you play it. So if you are someone that plays the infamous early Tarmogoyf, then this guy will do better than that because he won't get killed by some removal spell. He also is in the game 2 scenario where your opponent's like, oh, man, that Tarmogoyf really beat me down. I bet I should probably just bring in all my relics and turn them into 0/1s. This guy at least stays a 0/4.
So this guy is strictly worse than Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
But it's also significantly cheaper than Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
And that's the benefit of it. We were speculating and hoping there would be some sort of Delirium Goyf. We got one at common, which is I am excited for Pauper for. Because it is always going to cost 2 mana, unlike Delve creatures.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I may actually have something already in the works for this card for Modern as a budget deck.
Yep.
But beyond budget purposes, it's a beater.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that we, in fact, designed / predicted this exact card.
Mine was better.
Sure.
I think it should have been a 4/5, and it didn't have to be common.
Right.
It could have been uncommon.
If it was an uncommon 4/5.
If it was just... Yeah, as long as it became a 4/5.
Yep.
Cost 2 mana, didn't care what the starting stats were.
Yep.
But that's fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, so, if
It's
you
there.
play green decks in Modern, you don't want to buy Tarmogoyfs, well, guess what, buddy? Here's your Tarmogoyf. So I had some sort of also rans. Cryptolith Rite is the turns all of your creatures into mana dorks enchantment.
I mean, it's neat. I thought it just kind of put it in my neat category.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything that really needed it right now, but who knows?
It could turn a green-white X tokens deck into a pretty serviceable ramp deck.
I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but you can do it now. Like that was kind of the thing. Like all these things are just like you run all these creatures, and now you have all this mana. Like, because on something like turn 5, turn 6, you get to play this 2 mana enchantment and tap all your creatures and play something big. But I don't really know of any decks that run a ton of really small creatures to have a board state and then really big expensive spells that you need to tap your team down for.
It turns a green-white X Lingering Souls deck into a Tooth and Nail deck pretty easily.
I guess.
Right? I mean, it is certainly neat. I don't know if it's...
Right, yeah. That's basically where I landed.
Autumnal Gloom, I love this card. This is the other almost Tarmogoyf. So it's 2 and a green for an enchantment. It has black, put the top card of your library into your graveyard, and then Delirium at the beginning of your end step. If there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, transform it. It becomes a 4/4 trample hexproof. 2 extremely good things on a very respectable body. I love everything about this card.
Right.
It's green and black. Automatically, I'm a fan. You know, would I play a 4/4 trample hexproof, even if it costs 2 green black, let's say for the sake of argument, to get turn Delirium on? Like, would I play that card? Yes, I would. I like him a lot. Vessel of Nascency is obviously the green vessel. So it's a 1 mana enchantment. You sack it for 1 and a green, reveal the top 4 of your library. You may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. So this is almost... It is a common, like, Oath of Nissa, basically, but it hits a lot more stuff.
I mean, yeah, it's green card selection at common, meant for limited. Like, it's very good at what it was designed to do.
Yeah, but also, like, you can also just dump 4 cards in your graveyard for 2 mana.
Sure. 3.
No, it says you may put an enchantment or...
No, 3 mana.
Oh, yeah, technically 3 mana. 3 mana on the installment plan. I also put Hermit of the Natternolls on my list.
2 and a green for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw a card. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform him. He turns from a 2/3 into a 3/5, and whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw 2 cards.
Yes. That card's real good.
Potentially, yeah. I was looking at this in different lists.
I like him in the... Oh, there he is. I like him in the same decks that I would run Witchstalker out of the sideboard. You're staring at me like there's not a deck that exists that you would play Witchstalker in.
Green Stompy.
Still good. Like, curve Voice of Resurgence into this guy.
Blue Black was a better deck.
Sure.
Then you could... But...
Yeah, so, like, if in the... like in green-white, I could see going, like, Noble Hierarch into Voice of Resurgence into this guy, and then when your opponent casts a spell on your turn, you just get, like, ultra value. Like, you get your token from Voice, and you also draw a card.
Right. I mean, that was kind of the problem with what I found, though. In most situations, the decks that wanted it was almost just win more. Like,
but who doesn't want to win more?
Rather just win.
You don't want to win less.
No, you just want to win in general. Doesn't matter if you're winning more. You can just win. Like, it's never going to come close to... I don't know. It depends on the shell. Because, like, in green-white, obviously, like, getting the voice tokens probably much bigger. Like, do I want to cast this guy or Kitchen Finks on turn 3? Do I want to, like... Or if I'm on Birds of Paradise or Noble Hierarch, do I want to cast him on turn 2? Like,
well, no, you want to cast Kitchen Finks on turn 2, and you want to cast this guy on turn 3, so when they spend 2 spells to kill your Kitchen Finks, you get to draw 2 cards.
Or you can go Voice Resurgence into Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, and then you cast this guy, and then you get a voice token. You get 2 voice tokens and draw 2 cards. When they double lightning bolt your Kitchen Finks, get rid of it.
Yeah, so it's 1 more. Like, you're already super far ahead. I don't know. No, I did actually like this card. I just couldn't find anything to put it in that I wanted to put it in besides something like Mono Green Stompy.
I also an honorable mention shout out to Loam Dryad, which is it's a mana door. It's basically a 1/2 Springleaf Drum.
Yeah.
Except you can't activate it the turn it comes into play. So it's worse than Springleaf Drum.
I mean, it's limited fixing.
Yeah. So it's 1 green for a 1/2 Dryad Horror, and it has tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color to your pool. So neat.
Yeah.
Just like that's one of the things that makes this set like hard to review is there are so many cards that are at least cool,
right,
and like borderline playable, or like build a deck for me and I will perform for you. That it's just, it's good. So good. All right, gold cards. Olivia, mobilized for giant swords. Because for real, that is a big sword.
It is.
And like crazy kill you outfit. I'm a fan of the art for this card, and not so much the card.
So once again, I mean, if we were gonna give the same treatment to spirits and werewolves, vampires also deserves a nod. This is a very good aggressive vampire. It allows you... It's a madness enabler that also allows you to buff up your creatures. So, Olivia is 1 black and red for legendary vampire knight. 3/3 flyer, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. It gains haste until end of turn and becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. So if you also have other cards that care about vampires,
right,
it makes it feel bad if you have a non-vampire creature just naturally in the deck.
Right.
So it's obviously good in that home. It won't see play anywhere else.
Yeah. The Gitrog monster. I love this thing.
I love it. I wish it was more playable.
So 3 black green for a 6/6 legendary frog horror, aka the commander that I would use because it's a frog.
I know, it's great.
So he is a 6/6 with death touch for 5, which is awesome. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So what I'm seeing here is Jund Countryside Crusher Gitrog monster deck.
I do not think this card is modern playable.
I
think a lot of people are in that camp. It's an awesome card.
Yeah.
Everyone should love this card because you should.
Yeah, there's nothing not to love.
But 5 mana, 6/6 death touch in modern, I don't know what that's supposed to do against a blighted agent or an etched champion with a cranial plating.
Literally nothing.
It sure isn't much. And that's basically the thing. I think there are already even better cards for stuff like the Life from the Loam decks in modern. Like, you don't want a 5-drop in Dredge or Life from the Loam in modern. Like, you just don't. So, love the card, not for modern.
Yeah, I mean, I think Altered Ego probably falls in that same...
Yeah, I didn't even add it to the
camp,
list for that reason.
So, Altered Ego is the shapeshifter. It's a clone. It's a clone effect. But it's very expensive.
Well, no, it is clone, and then it has the ability to pay more to make it bigger.
Yeah, and it can't be countered. I mean, that's something. Honestly, like blue-green, man, I've been trying to brew like blue-green anything good, and I just can't. Like, they never seem to have the mechanics that they get in sets. Never seem to be like strong enough to really get there.
If you want to play like blue and green, you have to invest in Tarmogoyfs. Like, that's the problem.
No,
it's either Tarmogoyf or combo.
It's Tarmogoyf, it's Moldgraph Scavenger, and whatever else.
Snapcaster Mage.
I would be much more willing to buy Snapcaster Mages than Tarmogoyfs.
Especially if you're just brewing on Magic Online, Snapcasters are still cheap.
Yep, $15-16.
Right.
Anguish Unmaking we already talked about. Almost Vindicate is still really, really good.
Yeah. Solid one of in any deck that can't run Maelstrom Pulse.
Yep.
So,
Prized Amalgam is 1 blue-black for 3/3 zombie. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard and you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from the graveyard to the battlefield tab at the beginning of the next end step. So it's free recursion in decks that already have recursion. So like play this guy off of a Bloodghast, play this guy off of a Gravecrawler. It's
just really good. It fits both.
Hope you have a path.
Right. It's good in blue-black zombies. It's good in stuff that's just going to be dredging lots of creatures in and recurring them. So you do need to work it in, but it seems like a very good include.
Yep. Yeah, I have no complaints about that card. The Shadowlands, the rare land cycle from this is worse than Checklands, but I
don't even know if they're worse than Checklands now. It's these lands fit in a very awkward spot. It's almost like there's a new category of lands where you just don't care about and you can just put in whatever you want. Now, because we have the battle lands, shock lands, check lands, like the best lands besides fetches and shocks are probably just the unfinished cycle from Mirrodin Block.
Yes.
The fast lands.
Yep.
And then I put these in a very, very close race with the battle lands and the check lands. The battle lands are probably inching forward the more I've played with them in Modern.
Well, they're fetchable.
Right. Because
just that alone.
So, I don't know. In any two-color deck, these definitely fit. Post-rotation, it'll probably be a good budget option.
Yeah. So here's the thing. In a deck that, like, you couldn't put these in an aggro deck. Like a deck that's running 19 lands, I think these are going to end up either coming into play tapped more often than not, or stuck.
In a deck running 19 lands, like, you just want fetches and shocks anyway. Right. You're not going to want anything more.
No, I run a couple check lands because they're free.
I guess it depends on how heavy of splash you need, but like if in a 19 land mana base, if you're running 8 fetches, how many shocks do you need to make up the rest of it?
Like 1, probably. Like
maybe
realistically.
And honestly, you're probably running 2, depending on how heavy the splash. You could be up to 3.
Yep.
Like it really does depend.
Yeah, I mean, I run a shock and 2 check lands, and it's fine. So these are something. And then there's an uncommon fixing cycle that is just always comes into play tapped. And then there are the fancy lands. So there is Drownyard Temple, which is a tap to add Wingding colorless mana to your pool, and it has pay 3 generic, return Drownyard Temple from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So smallpox. Life from the Loam, like Dredge.
I don't think Loam or Dredge actually want it because it only taps for colorless.
Well, they've better ways of getting lands back.
Right.
But, you can trigger landfall off of it. You can...
Yeah, this made my list because of its uniqueness, not because of its power level.
Well, in a Bloodghast smallpox deck, this is great.
Sure.
And since I play a lot of those decks, it's very good. The other rare land is Westvale Abbey. It is comes into play untapped. It taps for Wingding. You can pay you can pay 5 mana, tap it, pay a life, and put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. And it also has 5 tap, sacrifice 5 creatures, transform Westvale Abbey, then untap it, and it becomes Ormondal, Profane Prince, who I assume is a Liliana antagonist that we will see something about in the next block, or the next thing.
Sure.
He is a 9/7 legendary creature with flying, lifelink, indestructible, and haste. And apparently he is the heir apparent to Grizzlebrand for the Skursdag, who were the demon worshippers from original Innistrad. So in a tokens deck, he's pretty good.
Yeah, no, this card's very interesting. Once again, it's a cool experiment in what you can do with dual face cards.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of shells that this fits in. It'll be fun to see what people do with it.
Yeah. Doom Traveler, Lingering Souls, Flashback Lingering Souls, pay 5, smash face. You know, or even just like as a... I had originally pegged this as a finisher in a tokens deck. And, you know, it also has make more tokens, like late game. It's templated almost like Sliverhive.
Right.
Or Council, Foundry of the Consuls. They're all kind of in that little area. And so TLDR, we each picked top 5 modern playables. So why don't you go first?
Do you want to switch off or?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So yeah, these are the ones that I think easily slot into modern the easiest. At 5, I was really kind of torn between Eerie Interlude and Silver Partisan, so I went with which one I like more, and it's Eerie Interlude. For reasons like I already said, it's a very good fair card, and it's very easy to abuse. And beyond what I already said, like, God, Eerie Interlude plus Revelark is just so good. And things like that. If you want to go back to the Abzan Ghostway decks, it's like, oh, I guess I'll blink my Siege Rhino and my Revelark and my Exploit Demonic Tutor Sidisi and everything else. And it's just... So whether you're playing it fair or you're playing it busted, awesome card.
Yep.
Excited for it.
Yep. My number 5 was Moldgraph Scavenger. Common Goyf. Just slam in every deck. Like, I'm happy because we predicted it, and it is, you know, budget Tarmogoyf is, and like actual budget Tarmogoyf, not something that almost kind of acts sort of like a Tarmogoyf, but it costs 3 mana. Like, in the 2 slot, in a Tarmogoyf deck, and you don't have, whatever, $400, here you go. You should place that for $1, and it's still really good.
Yeah. All right, so for my number 4, I had Thalia's Lieutenant, because I think this card's sweet, and it's just so easy to brew around humans in Modern. Like, between all of the awesome fixing you have, like, you don't even have to go... So we mainly talked about white splash variants. There used to be a 5-color humans deck too, with Dark Confidant, Champion of the Parish, Thalia, Anafenza the Foremost, which puts the one that puts counters on things not with bolster. But I think Anafenza Kindred Spirit is a human spirit. I don't actually know.
I'll check.
I don't think it ever actually made the deck, but just overall, and you do have such great mana between Cavernous Souls, Ancient Ziggurat, and now you have Collected Company and Aether Vial as well. So you can go mono white disruptive humans, you can go 5-color every good stuff humans.
Yep.
Just awesome to build around, really powerful card. I think people are gonna like go to town with it. I'm gonna go to town with it.
Yeah, she's a spirit soldier.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah. My number 4 was Anguished Unmaking. I love it. I'm gonna slam it. I'm gonna run it 2 and 2, which I talked about last time.
Okay.
I'm gonna run 2 in the main, 2 in the side, in the black white token pox planeswalker deck, because it just covers all of the bases.
Right. I was actually kind of surprised you didn't have it higher.
Yeah. I mean, it was in pseudo no particular order.
Got it. I feel you.
So because you had Anguish on making it 2, I had it
did.
at 4.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Well, I mean, I think it's probably more,
Yeah.
you know,
It's gotta be
like,
something.
and I had Thalia's Lieutenant at 2, and you had it at 4.
Yeah.
So we kind of like swippity swapped those things. So your number 3.
Sin Prodder, because I feel like this was on for 2 reasons. One, I think it's very powerful in the shell that I already talked about. Grixis mid-rangey. I also think people are going to jam it into inappropriate decks, but that's fine too. Like, sometimes you're just not going to hit lands off of it, and your opponent's just going to be in a very bad position. It is such little investment for such a high potential reward. It's a very potentially powerful card. It's a 3-powered creature with evasion. Very good. Definitely modern playable. And who knows? I could just be completely flat out wrong, and people are going to find all sorts of shells for this card. I mean, I know there are more shells for this card, but I'm not sure what they are yet. So it's going to be fun to see what people do with it.
Yep. And so obviously Thalia's Lieutenant was my number 2. So my number 1 was Asylum Visitor. That is the card of my dreams.
I mean, you skipped Geese's Bidding at number 3.
Oh yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I lied.
It's fine.
So Geese's Bidding, I put it number 3. I can't say no to that rate.
When you can get it.
4/4 for 3 mana, but it goes into decks that I already play.
Sure.
You know, like it makes Liliana and Necrogen Mists better. It's more bodies. So I like that card a lot. Plus I do like that they brought Gisa from Commander into, like, I hope she has a character card in the next set.
That'd be cool, yeah. They did that a little bit because Stitcher Geralf also has a commander card.
Yep.
They didn't quite bring him in as much, but he's in a lot of the flavor text. That would be interesting to see.
Yep, I would like to see both of them in the next set.
Anyway, Asylum Visitor for you.
Yeah, Asylum Visitor. It's the Dark Confidant that I've always wanted.
The one that doesn't cost $25.
No, not even that. It's
because 8-Rack pretty much has a fairly low curve. Like, Dark Confidant was always a fairly good draw engine, being that it was so... You weren't losing enough life if you could hide behind Ensnaring Bridge, rather.
Sure. No, Asylum Visitor in a higher curve, like mid-range Black X deck.
Okay.
Like, that's the card draw that I want to be able to fearlessly play 5 drops in that deck. Yeah. And Dark Confidant does not let me do that.
No, and Phyrexian Arena costs 3 mana and doesn't swing for 3.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So this is the exact card draw engine that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so in whatever, you know, like, I would even I probably wouldn't put it in black white, but you know, that there's a deck that's waiting with the cards that I already have and the cards that I have in the mail, and I will say, oh man, I went pretty overboard with the pre-orders for this set.
I didn't pre-order a single card.
I did my normal like sets of like commons and uncommons that I knew I was going to want.
Okay.
Because
I probably should have done that.
You know, because those are like one, they're always cheap in the beginning, and you know, sometimes they either stay the same or they get cheaper, but then occasionally you'll get like these weird breakout cards where you're like
Monastery Mentor, which pre-ordered for like 50 cents because they were like, oh, it's a very good uncommon, it should be 50 cents to $1, and then it ended up being $2.50 to $3.
Oh, Monastery Swiss Spirit.
Monastery Swiss Spirit, yes.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to have to pay, you know, $12 for a playset of a card that I could have gotten for 40 cents.
Right.
So I usually do that. And also, like, even if I'm buying boxes, which I rarely do, there is no guarantee that you're going to get playsets of uncommons in a box.
Right.
So, you know, once again, to spend 80 cents or whatever to get the stuff that I want. I did that. And then I went back and I was like, man, I bit early on Asylum Visitor. I was like, I want that card. Anguish Unmaking, I want that card. And there were even some that I considered going back for. I was like, man, but I probably spent about 3 times as much as I normally do on a pre-order for this set. Because it's just so good.
A lot of the cards are really cool. But, all right, so for my number one, it's incredibly boring, but I think it's true. Invasive Surgery. From when it was spoiled unofficially to now, I will champion that card. It's just very good. I will jam it in a lot of things. I will play this in Legacy. I will play it in Standard. I will play it in Modern.
Yeah. Legacy is real good.
No, it is. So once again, Invasive Surgery. It's Envelop. It's a single blue to counter a sorcery spell, and with Delirium, you get to take all of their copies of that sorcery from hand, graveyard, and deck, and get the free information alongside of it. I mean, this one's a no-brainer to me. Merfolk sideboard right in. In my blue and white Death and Taxes brew that I have, right in the sideboard. Anything similar. The blue-red Delver list with Young Pyromancer, I would put this in the sideboard in.
Oh, yeah.
Just because Wraths are very good. If you're playing a deck with lots of small creatures and you're running the color blue, put Invasive Surgery in your sideboard.
Yep.
I just, like, I don't know. This is the one I probably should have pre-ordered.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be super expensive, but I imagine it will turn into something like Sphinx's Tutelage where it peaks out at 75 cents to $1 just because people are buying it. And people aren't selling them to stores.
Sphinx's Tutelage. Oh, Sphinx's Tutelage, not... I thought you were talking about Sphinx's Revelation. I'm like,
no, Sphinx's Tutelage, the 3-mana enchantment mill card.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was like... That sometimes hits around $1. Because it was an uncommon that people didn't sell to stores and people wanted. So, this is the same thing. Save your copies, you'll use them.
Yep.
Boring number one pick for sure. It's no Goblin Dark Dwellers, but
yeah,
I mean,
what is
very good.
Yep. All right, so our BNR prediction or whatever, either Temple or I will get banned. Probably I guess if I had to put money on it. I honestly don't see them changing anything else.
Yeah, so...
Would I like it if they changed other things? Like, my wish list is that they would use this opportunity to ban Seaman Spirit Guide.
Yeah,
but
it's probably fine. But, yeah, I agree.
Well, if we're chopping fast mana, right? Like, because that's the real problem with Temple and, well, really the problem with I is that you play it and then it generates... essentially free mana on turn 1.
Right.
You know, it generates, if you kept a 2 mimic hand, it generates 4 mana on turn 1, which you shouldn't be able to do.
And it can generate 2 mana on turn 2 and 2 mana on turn 4. Like, it with no drawback.
Right.
because it's not like it's City of Traders or Ancient Tomb.
Right.
Like, it's just not drawback in your deck. So I think is what I would recommend. Aaron Forsyth had some pretty good tweets about the subject. People asking him about a modern restricted list, and he was like, in parentheses, like, presumably green red Tron players that are worried about I getting banned. So I'd also like to address that.
They still got Ancient Stirrings.
Green red Tron will be fine without Eye of Ugin. You take your 80% matchup against Jund and counterspell decks, and it becomes a 60% matchup. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
let's not forget,
it'll be okay.
Hall of Fame win percentage, 65%.
Yeah.
Just
fine.
Play the game.
But yeah, I think it'd be too difficult to make any other changes to the ban restricted list since they don't have any data from the last ban restricted list update.
Right.
Everything has been so skewed because of Eldrazi, they don't know what's happened since they banned Twin.
Right.
And we still need to figure that out before we make any other changes.
Yep.
So I expect no other changes beyond Eldrazi being nerfed.
Yep. Decks. God, when are we not working on decks? We're just always working on decks. The main decks that I'm working on right now are Esper Spirits. And Esper Spirits is basically Esper control, but all the creatures are spirits. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I run Nether Trader because I've been looking for a home for that card since forever. And I get to run Eidolon of Countless Battles. And, man, he brings the beats.
Yeah.
In this deck, like in a Lingering Souls deck, he's just crazy. The other thing is I'm working on a fungus deck, which is really just like a Naya Managorger Hydra deck. Originally, it started out... It's like a Hardened Scales deck, basically.
Okay.
But it runs Managorger Hydra and then Phyto Hydra at the top end. And this whole thing started because I was like, man, I really want to make a Fungasaur deck. And
you can when you draft my mono white border cube.
Yeah. And then I realized that Fungasaur is terrible. And so I was like, I think you actually said, haven't they printed a better Fungasaur?
Yeah, since then.
But I did run...
At least 3.
Yeah, so I actually did play for a little while with 4 Fungasaurs and 4 Spark Mage, the haste ping guy.
Yeah.
It wasn't great.
No.
I didn't really get there.
No. The archetype's okay in the cube because you get Tim, the
yeah.
original sorcerer, and Fungasaur. That's a little bit better, but it's not great.
It's not great.
I mean, it's okay when you're facing down equally bad creatures, but when you're facing down Thought-Knot-Seers, it's not great.
So, but I will say, man, having a Tim is really good.
No, it is.
Like pingers are really good. And in my head, I remember Tim costing 2 from like a million years ago.
No.
But he actually costs 3, as
does.
do all of the current ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the good ones. Like there's the Goblin Pooflinger at 1 mana, but he only hits players.
Right. And I think, well, there aren't any that repeat really, right? At 2 mana?
No, I don't.
That hit
I don't
creatures?
believe so. No, because I would have been playing it. I think was it Cunning Spark Mage is the one that has haste.
Yeah, and there's one that when it enters does a damage, but it's not repeating.
Yeah. So Spark Mage Apprentice does that. Cunning Spark Mage is the one that I ended up running because you pay 3 mana, but you get the ping immediately because he has haste.
Right.
And then it just runs, a bunch of ramp paths, and then it has Abzan Falconer, and because of the ramp, it lets you run Abzan Battle Priest. So they also get lifelink because you are going to be a little bit behind against aggressive decks just because you need more setup than most decks because you're trying to ramp into a 5-drop.
Right.
Phyto Hydra is the better Fungasaur that I've been looking for. But it is 2 green, white for a 1/1 plant Hydra. If damage would be dealt to Phyto Hydra, put that many +1/+1 counters on it instead. So the big thing that holds Fungasaur back, and not the biggest thing, actually it probably is the biggest thing that holds Fungasaur back, is that the trigger, that it's a trigger, not a replacement effect.
Right.
So you can't kill a Phyto Hydra with a lightning bolt, even though it's a 1/1, because instead of taking 3 damage, it just gets 3 counters.
Right.
But you can kill a Fungasaur with a lightning bolt, and as a 4 mana 2/2, that is not an attractive proposition.
It's not great.
But man, I tried hard, and he just didn't quite get there. So those are really the decks that I'm working on. I still have 8-whack put together. Deck's real strong. I feel like I've gotten it to the point where it's pretty polished, and like this is the current incarnation is the list that I would bring like to an event. And I think it's, with the green splash, I think it's strong enough that it could actually go. Like I would take this list to a comp REL, like a real tournament, and not feel bad about it. Whereas like the old one, the mono red version, is just sort of like a hope that you get paired up against people that are soft aggro decks.
Right.
And that's not going to happen reliably enough for you to like top 16, top 8. Whereas with the green splash, just having Destructive Revelry makes all the difference in the world. Like, takes the deck from mono red aggro to I can actually beat Leyline. I can actually beat,
Yeah, you need to be able to win more than just game 1.
Yeah.
So
overall, like I said, I'm really happy with the deck. I'll post up the most recent list that I was running, and somebody on the stream today requested the list for the Esper Spirits deck, which I will also put up. And that, as they say, is that. So what are you working on?
So I had kind of a dilemma trying to figure out what I wanted to play for the next YouTube series.
Yep.
Which, if you weren't aware, we have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, we do. YouTube.com/T_1Thoughtseize.
That's not true. Turn 1 Thoughtseize all spelled out.
Is it?
It is. It's
look.
It
is. It is all spelled out.
We use T1 Thoughtseize when the usernames won't accept Turn 1 Thoughtseized spelled out. Which is the problem with Twitter and Twitch. And so YouTube actually allows us to have Turn 1 Thoughtseize, so it's Turn 1 Thoughtseized. You can also just search Turn 1 Thoughtseized in YouTube search bar. And on the weeks we're not doing podcasts, we're doing YouTube series.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure what I wanted to play. Since I played Blue-Red Prowess Delver and you played Goblins, I felt like I should probably do something not aggro.
Yeah.
So I was messing around with a couple different Esper lists. I played Esper Draw Go Do Nothing deck that like the win con was White Sun Zenith, which it gets there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, no, I'm sure. White Sun Zenith.
Have you ever
real
just
good
looked at 6 cats and realized I shuffled White Sun Zenith back in? Just how do you beat that? You don't.
Hey, at least you can't snap White Sun Zenith. Or no, can you? Is that a trigger? No, okay.
You can't.
No, it's part of the casting cost.
I believe it's Well, it's as the spell resolves, which is the other thing. Because if you can Snapcaster a White Sun Zenith if they counter the White Sun Zenith.
Got it.
That's the difference. But anyway, so yeah, I think it was. I might have ran a Gideon Juror too actually in that deck, but
seems good.
Those are the win cons: Snapcasters, White Sun Zenith, Gideon Juror. Anyway, it didn't get there a lot, surprisingly. For some reason,
a do nothing deck in a proactive format. How could that go wrong?
Man, it just was too. I probably wasn't running enough main deck discard. After playing with it a bit and looking at more lists, I should have ran more discard instead of most of it out of the board. But I was looking at different things, and I think I finally settled on Esper Gifts Ungiven.
Okay.
Kind of control-y, not really. and you have a whole slew of toolbox abilities to get things. Obviously, the main combo in Esper Gifts is you give some given for Unveiler Rites and a creature, and you untap and you get that creature.
Yep.
The creatures I'm running in the deck, besides 4 Snapcaster Mages, are, I think I'm running 1 Tassiger just for generic good beats.
Yep.
Iona, Shield of Emeria, is a very general one. It comes into play, and I get to name a color, and my opponent can't cast spells with that color anymore.
Card's
so
big old blowout.
Yeah, it can be. What the weird thing is, actually, up against decks like Goblins, if you already have a board state and I haven't dealt with it yet, Iona isn't good enough. So I need to like Wrath the board, then Gifts, then Iona, and hope I don't die in that 2-turn limbo. Elish Norn is sometimes better against the Goblins deck. Almost always better.
Always better.
So Elish Norn is the other one. Elish Norn also fairly good against Affinity, we'll say.
Yeah.
It's good against several decks. It just so happens it's good against Infect as well, because if I'm not dead by the time Elish Norn hits the table, you just can't, because Elish Norn is all your opponent's creatures get -2/-2, all your creatures get +2/+2 besides Elish Norn.
Yeah. But she is a 4/7.
She is a 4/7.
Really need a lot of help.
Yeah, she's okay. Your opponent can't keep their infect creatures big enough through every phase.
Right.
So Elish Norn is just going to always wipe them out. And then I'm going to try out a Grave Titan, because I like Grave Titan. And
Card's
Grave
real
Titan's
good.
Sweet. So I'm running Grave Titan. The rest of the list, I don't think I run a single counterspell. I believe I'm running 7 discard spells, 4 Serum Visions, 4 Path to Exiles, 3 Lingering Souls, 1 Wrath of God, 1 Damnation, 2 Supreme Verdicts. And the reason that it's that split up, because normally if I was running this deck, like I have 4 Supreme Verdicts on Magic Online, I would normally just jam all of them.
Sure.
But with Gifts Ungiven, the cards that you're tutoring up with Gifts Ungiven have to have a different name.
Right.
So if I need a Wrath effect, I'm just going to go and get Wrath of God, Supreme Verdict, Damnation, Snapcaster Mage.
Yep.
And we're good. That means I'm getting a Wrath effect. So that's pretty much the deck. You stay alive long enough to resolve Gifts Ungiven and Unburial Rites. And if that doesn't work, you have Grave Titan and Tassiger and Snapcaster Mages. Lingering Souls tokens, I guess.
Yep.
Eventually, you can actually cast Elish Norn. The deck is not land heavy. It's only 24 lands. But eventually, you get to Elish Norn mana. So I think that's the one I'm going with next. I thought about asking for advice on the podcast where I could explain decks better. But the problem is I need practice before... Like, the podcast's gonna come out on, like, Thursday, ideally.
Yep.
People can't give feedback until then. It'll be too late. But there is one other list, and I kind of alluded to it before. I'm working on a budget mid-range deck using the new Common Goyf.
Yep.
So that's what I'd like to play after Esper Gifts, and we'll see how that goes. As for right now, I can say that I'm definitely running Doran the Siege Tower in the deck. Yep. Because the cool thing is, both Doran is good on its own, and Common Goyf is good on its own, and they work better together.
Yep.
So,
best friends forever.
I mean, it is. It's like, oh, I don't have Delirium 4.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep. And then you get to play that sweet, sweet Nyx Fleece Ram.
It's in the board.
People always forget that Nyx Fleece Ram can attack.
Nyx Fleece Ram is so good.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, talk about... so good. All right, so with content, here is where we are at. The stream is up. I am still working on a schedule. It looks like everyone, or not everyone, the overwhelming majority of people seem to like 8 p.m. as their time. So what I'm gonna start doing is I probably will do on off weeks. So weeks where we're not doing, well, maybe I'll try. I'll try and do it every week. I don't know how long that's going to work. We'll see what happens. But at least every other week, I'm going to do a stream, and I'll probably do like an East Coast stream at 8 and like a West Coast stream at 11, because we're on the East Coast. So I'll stream at 8 for the locals, and then people can sort of jump on in the middle time zones, and then by the time the West Coast people come on at 11, I'll either still be there, or I will have taken a break and come back, or I'll do them on different days. Who knows?
We'll go 9 to 12.
Working 9 to 12, what a way to make a living. And by make a living, I mean play Magic while people watch. So we did get the fancy Twitch membership, so our replays, I believe, just stay up indefinitely now.
Okay.
So if you do happen to miss one, I had somebody on the stream. I just sort of randomly streamed today because I was home, and had somebody today ask if it was going to be up there, and it is. Yeah, it looks like they just stay up forever.
Cool.
So there you go. That is that. They're apparently having some issues with the YouTube export, so I will put the Twitch videos up on YouTube, but it's going to take a little longer than it normally would, because Twitch has like an integrated YouTube exporter. If they haven't fixed it by the time that I get around to working on the videos, I'll have to download them and then, re-export them.
We shall figure it out. And the goal is to get them on YouTube as well, so we have that as a front for content. So definitely go and please subscribe to that.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe we'll do something special when we hit different milestones. I haven't really thought about it yet. Yeah,
I think once we sort of get the rest of everything established, I think it probably will be Patreon time, just to kind of give people a more structured way to get what they want. If they want to support the show in that way, there's plenty of things that we can offer. I found somebody local to do t-shirts and playmats. Cool. Originally, we were planning on going to GP Charlotte. That is no longer the case for me anyways. I don't know if you were still planning on going. Basically, after they passed their horrendous discrimination bill, pretty much everybody that we were going to go with just pulled out. And I don't blame them. And I am, I was right there. It's one of those things where, even though it doesn't directly affect me, it directly affects a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I care about. Is the whatever $400 in tax revenue that they were going to make, from us going there, gonna change a legislator's mind? No, it's not that. But on the flip side, eventually enough people going, I'm not going to go here because of this,
right,
is something that is difficult for a legislator to ignore.
Right.
I was hoping that Wizards and or Star City was going to make some kind of formal statement about what they were going to do to mitigate the nonsense.
They did make some public statements.
Okay.
Just not a very long one. And so I'm very much in the same boat as you are with this. I haven't made a final decision, and I'd like to go over that now because I think there are a couple caveats. First of all, if you're not familiar with the story, people should be commended, the actual legislators of the city of Charlotte, because they were passing an opposite bill. They were guaranteeing the rights for the LGBT community, and it was the state of North Carolina that shut that down just weeks before the law was going to go into effect. So it's important to be upset with the right people and not the wrong people. And as a further of that, if you are, I personally don't believe boycotting the event is going to make such a drastic difference like you went over. The amount of tax revenue, Wizards of the Coast and Star City Games are both not large enough, even with the backing of Hasbro in Wizards of the Coasts, to stand up to an entire state of North Carolina.
Right.
That being said, if you do want to boycott this event, and obviously, like, it's not a bad idea.
That's your,
Both Wizards and Star City Games publicly said they're going to do everything they can at the event to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yep.
Which is good. The big problem still lies with the fact that it's only at the convention center.
Right.
Once you leave the convention center doors, no one knows what's going to happen. So if you are planning on boycotting, I think it's still important to let Star City Games and Wizards of the Coast know that at least they're doing the right thing.
Yep.
Because it's too close to the event to make any logistical changes. We can't change the location. It's been it's just can't happen. Like, we're stuck. And they're stuck with this.
Right.
So they're trying to make the best of a very bad situation. And so obviously there's going to be some, I imagine there's going to be some money lost over this for them as well.
Yes.
And while I'm sure they're prepared for that, at least let them know publicly that you support them in some way, if not financially, of this.
Yep.
Like, thank them for doing the best they can in such a bad situation, which they are working towards. I hope they come up with a more formal announcement to the public beyond just, like, they're going to rearrange the bathrooms in the convention center. They're going to do that sort of thing. They made comments on that, but just nothing big and grand announcement yet. I hope that does come out, but it's just something to consider. Like, they're trying.
Yep. There is an outside chance that I will be at GPLA. My mom lives out that way. She hasn't seen my daughter in a while, so I may do the hop, skip, and a jump to go out there. We'll see what happened. And so I will keep people updated. It's a very crummy situation, and we're all in it. And, everybody's got to do what they got to do, and we are doing what we have to do. So that's that. It's unfortunate, but there you go. So if people do, you didn't have anything else, right? Yeah, we definitely want to thank people for all the feedback that we've gotten. It has been very good and also very helpful. So please keep it coming. We really want to make sure that the stuff that we're doing is stuff that people want to watch. And I've been very happy with the response that we've gotten to the videos and all that sort of stuff. Our listener base and our subscriber base has continued to grow. So we really appreciate that. Definitely tell your friends. If you've got a Modern Night at your store, just be like, hey, have you guys heard this podcast? Once again, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that has been able to give us donations. We really appreciate it. It helps us pay for the various and sundry subscriptions that are required to sort of make rich content. Yeah. That's a media term in the industry. Rich media content. And it's not a guy named Rich who makes media content.
It's like a rich text file.
No, it's actually way more intense than a rich text file. That's a misnomer left over from like the 70s.
I know, it's great.
Like underlining used to be considered rich media.
I know.
So if you would like to get a hold of us, you can certainly do so on Twitter. Is probably the best place. It's twitter.com/T1Thoughtseize. You can get to us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. Please subscribe and like all our videos and tell everybody else to watch them. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher. I use BeyondPod on my Android device.
Sure.
It's quite good. I found it exceptional. And basically every other place that you can find a podcast, you should be able to find ours. And also on YouTube. We are now uploading for the what appears to be like 30 to 50 people that listen to us on YouTube. Like, we're happy to do it. There's no reason to deny those 50 people the ability to listen to our podcast in the way that they would like.
Exactly.
So thank you guys and gals. If you would like to donate to the show, you can go directly to our website, turn1thoughtseize.com, all spelled out. The donate button is right up on the top, and all of that money goes directly into paying for the expenses and helping us make stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'll probably do it this week. I found a place that will like print on a playmat and just done. So I'm gonna give that a whirl, and we've got a couple playmat designs that are sort of kicking around, and we'll see what people like, and we'll make some t-shirts, and people can buy our t-shirts and buy our playmats, and then we'll make more.
Yep.
So there you go. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch up with you next time.